my son found out I was going to be doing this, he said, well, it's how do you compensate somebody for for stealing what they have, including their history, their ancestry. Well, you make an offering, and you hope that in some way makes some level of amends for what happened. It's not going to be easy. Never has been. I don't know if it's ever been done correctly.
I believe that churches can do good. I believe in churches. My theology may be squishy, but I believe in churches. And my kids don't. My adult kids don't. And I could see that my adult kids saw me as you saw me, as somebody who's just along with the establishment, seeing what I want to see, not seeing what I don't want to see. And I just had a need that still exists in me to do what I can. But do I believe that our efforts are going to lead to reparation on a scale that's going to make a difference? That's hard to believe, but I do believe that there needs to be a movement for it to happen at all, and movements start locally.
It's the everyday miracles of someone having courage to stand up and protect another person, to stand up and say, that's not quite kind, or stand up and say, yes, we should surrender this wealth, right? All of those things. That is God's will being done. That is God working in our everyday lives.
That's right.
And being able to honor that is just the basis of our faith tradition.
One of the things that is next and what's a challenge is figuring out how to engage people on a broader basis in the work. I think there are some folks in the congregation who struggle to know why we're doing the work. I think there are some folks who understand why the work should be done, but they are not personally engaged in the work. And so it's trying to figure out, this congregation likes to achieve things, likes to accomplish things. And I think justice work is not always a destination. You can't always look and say, we did this.
What I see our future challenges will be not that we gave that money to this project, but for me, if I'm going to be honest, that was not a difficult decision. But the other piece of that is what they'd like to do is have us as individuals, us as families, also surrender some of the wealth. And if I'm honest, that's a much more difficult thing for me to consider. That's a personal thing, and I think my kids could use that money. Mm-hmm. They're struggling, or what happens in retirement if things go poorly for us. We're going to need that. It's like, it's mine. It's a much more difficult decision, but that's what I think we're being challenged with now. Mm-hmm. Is, okay, that's all well and good that Oak Grove did this, but now.
When we think about continuing the work, financially in particular, I do think it's important to remember that this wasn't a one-time thing. And so that we continue to keep in mind, as our investments grow, do we continue to surrender funds? When we begin to receive funds from members who've moved on, when we talk about legacy giving, as part of our legacy giving, making sure that some of that money, some of that wealth is surrendered. Do we make that a policy of the church? I think that's a fruitful conversation for us to have. I know we've begun, or we've briefly talked about within our worship and music committee, of when different songs are played, if Afro-American spirituals are played, do we give some amount of stipend, some royalty to an organization?
It is really redesigning again to put into greater balance all who are related, all who are recognizing that they're here now because of what others have sacrificed before them. As an Indigenous person, I know that this land that I am on holds those stories and has that future hope already contained within it. So that is why it's important when we talk about restorative actions, we also make sure that we have the Indigenous history and the Indigenous voices to be part of that. We cannot talk about justice as like a fix it. We have to talk about justice as what people then value together to restore, regenerate, and to be able to rebuild.
I would like to see Oak Grove figure out how to make sure that their attitude about reparations is known statewide and nationally, so that people can count Oak Grove and communities like Grove among the numbers of people whose opinion on reparations cannot be ignored if you hope to get their vote in national and state elections.
We have to take the best of our past to create the type of preferred future that God is leading us into. Our vision is one in which we have created a way of being, a common ethic of really caring about one another. One of compassion and not competitiveness. One in which, we are not seeking, which we not tolerate a handful of people having everything and while the masses suffer. Where there is a just and equitable distribution of the resources of the earth where everybody can thrive.
The work of restorative actions is saying the well-being that we're talking about is our shared well-being. It's all of our well-being. When your people have not been doing well because of something this other group of people did, that was toxic to all of us. We just never recognized the toxicity of supremacy and colonialism. And that's global, that is worldwide. But then what we can say is when those communities do better and they have an opportunity to be able to express in a very truthful honesty about what's happened to them and what their interests are in our future, then we can find out all of our communities would do better. We'll all be healthier. We'll all, in fact, be able to come before God, in a very humble, honest way and say, I am feeding your sheep. I am taking care of the people that you have brought into my presence. Or I am receiving more now than I ever imagined or that I ever gave. There is so much more for me to be connected to in the way that Jesus has shared with us to take care of one another and what the purpose of our life will be.
What I would like to see Oak Grove understand the importance of what they've done as a starting point to talk about the surrender with other churches, not to as a point of look at what we've done, but rather this is something that we believe is the right thing to do with a significant amount of wealth that we've benefited from. It is good stewardship to do the right thing